Hello everyone, I'm really glad to be speaking in front of people again instead of my webcam, so it's nice to see you all here. First of all, who am I to talk to you? So my name's Feu Mourek, my pronouns are they, them, and I do GitLab trainings for NETWAYS, and I also work as a development advocate for Icinga, where I, for example, hold talks like this one, where I speak on how to contribute to open source. So if you're here, you probably know what Icinga is and what it does. So Icinga does monitoring, but it's not just what we do that is out there, but aside of the official repositories and core components, there are a lot of modules and plugins and themes that come from the community. I see a couple of contributors already that I know. And the main spirit behind it is open source. So we're an open source company. And to us that means that what we do is more than just source code. So open source also means the ethics behind it, and that goes along with that. And it also means that the people that are working at Icinga and for Icinga are more than just the people that we see in the office. There are a lot of people that also help the project that we do not necessarily know by person, and Icinga lives from your ideas and your contributions just as well. And for everyone who hasn't contributed, I would like to invite you to join in the fun as well. So who of you would say that they already contributed to any kind of open source project? Okay, so that's a good 30–40%. That's a lot of people. Let's see if maybe the number changes later after the talk. So the topic is how to contribute. And contributions mean more than just making changes in repositories. Of course, you can suggest changes or submit pull requests, but there is much more you can do for a project. And that is, for example, also making a difference for other users that use the product or use the project. So you can contribute in a forum, or you can write blog posts and tutorials about the product. And you can also help out the developers in other ways, for example, by testing the software, giving feedback on it, and just generally starting conversations about the topic, about the issues you found, or just the way that you use the product, because a lot of developers might not necessarily be in the same position as you are. You have your own environment, you have your own systems, and we most of the time don't know what they look like. Of course, we have our people that go out into the world and help with installing Icinga and maintaining Icinga, but still there are so many environments that we don't know about. And just to follow the agenda a little, I'm going to start with talking about how to make contributions or make changes in the repositories themselves. So on GitHub, there are our repositories, so both the Icinga core project, but also the modules and the plugins that are out there. And one way to interact with us is, for example, opening issues or giving feedback to issues. So if you find something that is wrong in your environment, if you think you found a bug, you can always open an issue, which by itself is already a contribution, because that might be something that slipped our tests or just a scenario that we didn't think about. And giving opinions and feedback to issues that are already out there might also help give a different perspective on the topic. And issues are not only bugs that you find, but also ideas that you have around the project that might improve it. So just feature requests in that sense. So if you have any idea on which direction could be improved, or some accessibility options that you need but the product doesn't provide, you can always open an issue about it and give feedback that way. So since I didn't trust the whole system and me having internet here, I just included some screenshots of how the the process works. So this is the repository of Icinga 2. And you can see here in the bottom there's already the markup of the project, basically. So you have the different directories with the changes that were last made in them. And here in the top, you can see the different actions that you can take. So if we want to interact with issues, we of course click on the Issues tab, and it takes us to the issue page. So here you can already see what kinds are open already. There are a lot of issues, and maybe if you've got the time to just look through them and see if you can just add something to the conversation, you can always hop in and make a comment if you have a GitHub account. We in this scenario want to make a new issue, so we click that button and have this selection here. So we can either file a bug report if we found something that is wrong. We can open a feature request and start suggesting new things. And there's also the option, maybe we just want to ask a question, then we go over to the community forum, which I will talk about later. So we want to open a bug report. Now we're taken to this section where there's the option to give a title, which is quite important. So you're going to try to feed the title with a concise piece of information about what is wrong. And there are already some suggestions down here in the body of the issue how to describe your bug, with how to reproduce, what's the expected behavior, and further down there, there's also information about your system that you can give. And making changes to the repository obviously doesn't only include interacting with issues, but you can also fork the repository. So the workflow on GitHub is that you make a fork, which is kind of a clone of the repository that you make on your own account. And then you create a pull request from that fork. So you're going to suggest pulling the information and the changes you made in your own repository into the main repository. So it is in the code base for everyone. There's usually also contributing guidelines in most repositories. So in Icinga, I know we have it, but most other repositories also include guidelines that you can read through, how the developers intend to use the different features there are, and how you can contribute in the best way. Let's see if I can open a new tab without ruining everything. Nope, I cannot. So GitHub itself also has some guidelines on forking repositories where you can read up on how it all works. And that is just under guides.github.com, where you can find a lot of information on how all of this works. And these are our contributing guidelines, so you can see a little bit about introduction, forking, and other information that you might need if you want to commit code into the repository. So, jumps right back in, that's good. That's less good. Where are my notes? So there we are again. So when it comes to forking and branching, if you want to contribute code, you want to try to stick with one issue or one topic at a time. So try not to merge different issues you found into one pull request or one issue, but make sure that they're all separated, because some might have a higher priority than others. So those need to get merged in faster than the others. And try to use meaningful names so developers can already see at a glance what kind of changes you're proposing and what's going to happen if they merge them. So opening a pull request, again, in the main repository page, you can easily choose just one of the different files to edit. I'm going to go explanatory through a documentation change. So we're going to select the doc directory here, and you can then choose a file from the many markdown files to edit. Those correspond to the Icinga docs. So if you have a page in the documentation, in the official documentation, where you found an error or something you want to improve, they will have the same structure in the URL than they have in here. So when you click on the file, you are in the preview mode, and if you click on that little pen over to the side here, you can just edit it in the web. Of course, that doesn't work with code as well. You can maybe make minor changes in the web editor, but for bigger changes, you might want to use it in your own IDE. But that is described also in the docs and the contributing guidelines to how to set up your own development environment. So here we want to edit the documentation. So I'm just going to add my changes here. And then when I scroll down, I come to the point where I propose my changes in a single commit. So I'm going to choose a nice commit message, maybe add some flavor text on what I added. And a good commit message basically consists of a very concise header where you just describe the issue itself. And if you have any additional information that doesn't fit in the roughly 80 to 120 characters that you should use in the message, you can make a new line or use the main body of the text field and add in some more information. If you're solving an issue that exists in the repository, you can also reference that issue with this keyword. So you use refs and then with a hash the commit ID, which will automatically link the pull request you're trying to open to the issue that you're trying to fix. So I clicked that button, I made my commit, and since I'm using the GitHub editor and I do not have merging privileges myself, I will be taken to my own fork automatically. So it started a new fork, which you can see here, the foy/Icinga2, so that is the copy that is on my account, where I made my commit. I can look at my commit, I can see I made some changes, and what kind of changes are also visible in that view. So you have everything concise here. If you click on create a pull request, you're going to try to send it over to the main repository. So you double and triple check everything that you've did, because this will now become publicly available, and submit your pull request. So this page here is now on the main repository. We're back to the Icinga2. This is where you can start your conversation with the developer. So this pull request is now online. You have your first comment. And you can see I already signed my CLA, a bit about that later, and some checks are also automatically running. A lot of projects, not just Icinga, have some integrated testing for new pull requests, for example. So all of the code that you submitted is automatically being run, being built, being tested, whether it works, whether it can be integrated or not. So you might need to wait for a few minutes to see if all of your checks run through. If something goes wrong, you will be notified and you can adapt the changes still at this stage. The merging is blocked because I am not a maintainer. I cannot merge my stuff. So this is the point where we have to wait for the developers or the maintainers of the project to accept or reject your changes. If there's something that still needs to improve, you will also see it here in this page. So the CLA, the contributor's license agreement, may be required for some projects. Nowadays, a lot of bigger projects have one of those already. And a CLA is something different from a CTA. So you're not giving away your copyright. It's still yours. but it makes it easier for projects to use your software and to distribute it without any legal issues behind it. Our CLA and most of the other bigger CLAs are based on the Apache Software Foundation Contributor License Agreement, which you can read through. The process is rather simple. You'll get walked through it. And once you have signed it for one of our projects, it's signed for all of the Icinga projects. So, now, documentation changes are probably the easiest way to get into contributing to software. So you read through the documentation because you want to, figure out how to do something with the project. And while you read through the documentation, you might find some typos because that just happens all the time. And if you find one of those typos, you can figure out where it's coming from and just open a pull request, really nice and simple like you've just seen, and fix those up. This will be your first contribution to the project, and it's always a valued one because no one likes those typos. You can also test the installation process, like even if you aren't actively using a project and you want to contribute to it, you can always test the installation process, see if for some OS it doesn't work as well as for others, and make an issue concerning that. And you can also suggest structural changes in the documentation, for example, if you think this one segment would make more sense if it was at a different place or higher up in the hierarchy. In this case, I wouldn't necessarily open a pull request, but start with an issue first. So discuss it with the people who initially created the whole thing to see if maybe there was some more thought behind that. So most of the documentation of most projects out there will be written in Markdown, or GitHub flavored Markdown if it's on GitHub, which is a rather easy to read markup language that you can also have a preview of in the editor itself if you use it online. Most of the projects will also have a contributing.markdown file somewhere in their project. And most of the projects also have a forum where you can ask questions also about how to contribute. I'm sure that most projects will be very happy to assist you in contributing to the project. And another aspect of contributing is making changes for other users. As I've said before, it's super helpful if you're just active in the forums of each project, because you help other people that use the product, and you can ask questions if you don't know how to do something. And that is also kind of a contribution, because other people will answer it, and other people that have the same issue will find the answer easier. So just the activity in the forums itself, I would already consider a contribution. Ask questions, start discussions about different aspects of the product. And you can always help others with problems that you faced and solved before. The Icinga forum looks a little something like this. So it's a basic discourse forum. We have some pinned posts and some getting started guides on how to find your way into it. And then it's actually pretty easy to go from there. You can also authenticate with your GitHub account if you have one. So it's made easy. And if you have any kind of knowledge about a project, you can always contribute by writing a blog post about it or starting discussions on social media. So every time you talk about a project, you give it some attention, and you will maybe also help others find to their project and start over the process of people contributing to it. So starting a conversation helps both the projects and other people who want to use it. And the last aspect I want to talk about is helping the developers. There are different ways from testing a software and checking out beta versions that are coming up, and just using what is out there and seeing if it works and giving feedback. And another thing is bug reports are kind of easy to just write, but writing good bug reports takes a bit of effort. So if you find a bug, you might want to try to reproduce it reliably. So if it just happens once in a blue moon and you don't know why, it's rather hard for the developers who don't even sit in front of your machine to figure out what went wrong where. So if you can figure out some certain steps on how to reproduce the bug, make it reappear every time reliably, that is super helpful for the developers to hook onto. Describe as much of your environment as possible. So what operating system are you using? What kind of version of the project are you using? Are you using any modules? Are you using any plugins that could interfere? So try to describe what you have so it's easier to reproduce your issue. And security issues are to be treated with special care. So if you think that maybe the software is vulnerable to an attack, to any kind of cybercrime is the keyword, I think, you should not really open an issue on a public GitHub, because that is an easy way for people to get in and to figure those out. So I would say all projects out there that take care of their security and that are being used widely, you should figure out a way where to open security issues. For most, it's on the website. For us as well, it's icinga.com/company contact security issues, which is just a button in the footer. Hi, Leonard. And there you can just reach out directly to the developers so we can fix the security issue before it gets out and before your environment and other environments are in danger. So after you've heard me blab about different kinds of contributing to open source projects, would some of you now say, yeah, maybe I have contributed after all? Do you want to show me your hands again? Who thinks it now? That's a lot more hands. That's like 80% now. So I've shown you some different ways on how to get into it, and maybe the rest of you want to give it a try at some point. Thank you very much.